Hi, everybody. This presentation is going to explore Scandinavian dating, marriage, and family values. And basically, it's just going to try to highlight the unique customs and modern perspectives that are kind of rooted in the traditional Scandinavian values and culture, mainly from Viking times and such. And so, starting out, what is Scandinavian culture? It kind of gets confused with Nordic a lot, but it's not. So, it's really Norway, Sweden, and Denmark are the countries, and there's a focus on gender equality and social democracy that kind of runs through and is prevalent in Scandinavian countries. So starting in the Viking Age, it was historically represented by a partnership or alliance between the bride and groom, um, and it could be for land or anything like that. But bride's consent was always considered an important, especially compared to other European countries. And so they would have ceremonies that were outdoors. They were pagan, where it was to the Norse gods, and they had rituals. Um, the ad, when Christianity kind of reached it, that's when you saw church weddings, and it was more standardized the way things looked. And this is shown here. And then in more modern dating or modern courtship, there's no more dowries or set up weddings like that. And it's pretty calm and aloof. It's kind of just like you meet your friends, you go on a coffee date, that kind of thing. Progresses slowly at first and is not exclusive. And then dating norms, nature-based dates are a big deal. That's kind of a big part of the culture in these Scandinavian countries. And honestly, just being yourself, being honest and authentic. Honestly, hanging out with friend groups or kind of having friend dates is pretty common. And then cohabitation, just living together before you actually get married. And then gender and society. So as a lot of people are aware, they have paternal leave for both male and female, which is really cool for bearing and raising children. And this is kind of part of the equality that's prevalent in these countries compared to other civilized countries or Western nations. And then sexuality and openness is really embraced as well, and there's a high acceptance and advocacy for the rights there. And there's large investments made into sex education, access to contraceptive care, things like that. And there's lowered teen pregnancy rates as a result. So as far as modern marriage customs and ceremonies, it's typical in Sweden for the bride and groom to walk the aisle together, and there's no kind of like handing off of the bride as there is in the U.S. or anything like that. And it's usually minimalistic and modest in the way that things are set up. And then wedding costs and expectations, it's really just split. Again, going back to equality, it's not like on the bride's family as it would be in the U.S. And it's usually like small scale events with like close friends and family. Again, modest and donations in place of direct gift giving. And then modern wedding traditions, they have an almond cake. It's called a kresenske cake that they dine on and snack on. And then folk music and dancing is always common. That's kind of the callback to the Viking, traditions that started it. And then they have personalized vows. And then couples parenting, again, it's advisory, not dictatorial, which basically just means they want to let the kids have autonomy. There's a big investment into education, and there's no stigma for like child-free couples or anything like that. Going back to like their sexual openness and LGBTQ support. And then government programs, there's huge investments in government programs and subsidies. There's universal childcare, which is common here, as opposed to in the U.S. in a state like Texas, there's not childcare in that way, and the big investments at a young age. And then the role of parents, again, it's pretty hands off. Like, um, again, weddings are kind of modest, so it's kind of just a collaboration, maybe a financial investment from both. And they can often be involved in the lives of their grandchildren if they have them, just as they are in the U.S. And then divorce, it's just you kind of have to view things pragmatically with focus on co-parenting and moving forward whenever there's a divorce. Legal consequences are minimal. Shared custody is common. It's kind of just you have to make the best out of a bad situation, but it is, just something that happened and you have to face realistically and honestly. And then in conclusion, it's really important to note that, the Viking culture and that women were able to own property, get inheritance, and things like that is what helped define the modern culture where women have an equal say, and there's freedom, equality, and balance, and just, general working together. And that's it. Thank you.